Blogtalk Radio.
Metallic Ice Straight Up by James Bravewolf. It was so cool to be cold back then in Paris. Sitting in those cafes during my first days in France, I watched my generation not caring, not ever caring, never ever caring. For they had been hypnotized to drink the hard alcohol of the machine, straight up with metallic ice. And how they so laughed and ridiculed everyone with belief, how they slit the throats with their educated tongues of those who still cared. It was so cool to be cold, sitting there next to my friend Marie-Christine. But I wanted to defend something. I wanted to tell them all in that cafe that there was something invisible, something sacred that deserved to be defended. But to them, the act of defending something was a vile incantation. For them, there was no right or wrong, nothing to defend. It was all an illusion. Nothing really mattered, nothing at all. And then a young man at the table quoted another man, an existentialist I knew little about, and the quote went like this: "To begin with, he, man, is nothing. He will not be anything until later, and then he will be what he makes of himself." But I knew even then that the quote had been cut off. The part that was missing said that it would be the machine who would remake the human being after the existentialist emptied humanity and the world of all meaning, right and wrong, good and evil. Days later, I stood there in that Normandy field, outraged, full of emotion. Marie-Christine had just told me that she had been raped, right in the same field where we now stood. I tried to offer her my sincerity. I tried to defend her, but she waved her hand. "Doesn't matter," she said. "Nothing matters." "What did the police say?" I asked. "Did they catch him?" And she said, "Why should I ruin his life?" And she spoke in a soft, monotone voice, so devoid of emotion. And I was shocked and confused. "What?" I said. And she said, "Why am I more important than him?" And I said, "He violated you. He'll do it again." And she said, "It doesn't matter. I don't matter. Nothing matters, really, in the end." I don't want to blame the French for existentialism. Existentialism is a machine creation. It is not organically French. It is not a French export. The French people, stubborn, defiant, and proud to be French, they were its first victims. The machine found Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvior, those who would help make France lose all faith in itself and in that sacred invisible force, some, with courage, still dare to call God. It was so cool to be cold back then, sitting in those Paris cafes, giving ourselves away to the machine. But some began to see through the facade of the social engineers of Europa and Pax America. Some thoughtful souls began to see that existentialism was a fuel that helped the machine take over the Western mind. The machine worried. It brought together the best minds it could buy and brought to great influence the mother of the machine, a woman who called herself Ayn Rand. And the privileged young elite from the wealthy towns of the east coast of America, where I grew up, began to worship the mother of the machine. Willingly hypnotized, they welcomed into their minds the great poison of greed, of seeing everything as something to use up, no matter the cost. For the mother of the machine had told them that the world was theirs to use and abuse. And the spirit of the landscape, the neighborhood kids on bicycles, all were valueless. Metallic ice, straight up. And at the very same time, the machine created for the neighborhood kids, those good-intentioned, sensitive souls, the flower power of the hippie movement, and laced it with hallucinogens in order to make the hypnotization complete. But soon even the good-intentioned hippies began to see that their leaders had betrayed them, had cynically returned to their mother, back to hedge funds and Silicon Valley, to complete the economicization of humanity. Decades passed, and the machine, now so confident, decided it was time for the final hypnotization. It was time for father to join with mother to finally finish off the creative spark of humanity. And they called the father of the machine New Buddhism. And today, New Buddhism is all the rage, created to take away sincere and honorable rage. All those who are hip worship this New Buddhism, statues in the backyard, and women's bodies so skinny you can see all the way to their emptiness. Everyone today, it seems, who has a little money is becoming a new Buddhist. Existentialism in disguise. I need something with my sushi, they say, and my yoga, so that I can continue accepting the unacceptable. As I write these words to you, Father Buddha and Mother Rand stand proudly in full view, and they have all the answers. Do not care, they whisper in soothing monotone. Don't ever judge. Don't care about what is being lost, for nothing matters anyway. Just keep on getting skinnier and skinnier, empty, all the way to the bone. Never be outraged and never ever condemn. Don't judge anyone else. Let the world be what it is, so that the men and women of the machine can do evil. In Paris back then it was too late. Marie-Christine's original soul could not stay within her. It drained away so delicately, like fine Calvados wine, the amber light of sacred Normandy life leaving her, replaced by a metallic taste in her mouth, an emptiness where nothing really mattered, nothing at all, not even herself. On a cold Brussels morning when it was still so very dark, we stood together and alone within that artificial airport light, a light that gave off no warmth or life at all. God and the soul are an illusion, James, she whispered to me. You'll see that one day. And then she disappeared into that empty airport darkness. Together, the mother and father of the machine, I believe, will try to destroy the last vestiges of individual thought in Western culture. Gone forever will be the ability to see good and evil, right and wrong. Gone forever will be the desire to sincerely care about each other. And you and I have been conditioned to do absolutely nothing about it. Just like Marie-Christine.
Listening to Crossing the Bridge, tonight's show entitled and subtitled Cool to be Cold, Existentialism as Fuel for the Machine, Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir taking aim at the world. Sartre and de Beauvoir were major change agents ushering in the age of existentialism, and we'll discuss what that really means. Because tonight we are going to take a sharper look at the legacy of French existentialism, which made lack of compassion cool, Brave Wolf is asking his French friends and listeners to bear with him, as nothing should be closed to inquiry, especially on those who have been made household names and cultural icons by the machine. Hello, Brave Wolf.
Hi, Lala. Sartre and de Beauvior became celebrities, as you so brilliantly pointed out when we prepped for this show. And they engendered a mystique, and this mystique was not allowed to be questioned. And this kind of non-questioning is continuing through Western culture, so that there are things that are not allowed to be questioned. And I feel, and I know you do, that this leads to the abuse of what we've seen and the abuse we're talking about tonight is that there was a imbalance between men and women, and the existentialists did not address this true imbalance. What they did was they took the woman and said she was not placed in a good position relating to men, and instead of writing that in a compassionate, correct way, what they did was they created a Marxist atheist paradigm for the woman to become an economic unit. And that cannot be overemphasized, that the woman was not freed by existentialism. And just as now existentialism has morphed into this new Buddhism, it is also another prism, because this soul idea is not addressed also in the new Buddhism. I believe it is an acid that rots away the bridge. And as you know,
Good. Well, as we talked about, and you said existentialism killed God, because up to that point of when Sartre wrote Being and Nothingness, there were Christian existentialists, and it was part of a system of Western philosophy that had been, where there was a search for meaning and to understand God and what is God. And then existentialism came along and declared that there was no God. Yes, it changed everything.
Everything. It just turned everything upside down. And you're right. Philosophy was this search for meaning and search for God, and then the existentialists came and began to break that down, began to break down this basic idea of good and evil. And what they were doing, they weren't freeing humanity against what they saw as the tyranny of Christianity. What they were freeing, this is just a code word. There was no freedom. This was a Marxist movement to place the woman into the labor force, and that way to create this herd mentality of this selfishness, this really narrow-minded individualist attitude, where you are male and female are competing against each other instead of working together to build community or to build family. All of this was broken down, and it was a purposeful.
Sartre and de Beauvoir, they shared two strong ideologies, and that was atheism. And then they also had a very strong disdain for the middle class or for the common person.
Yes, they called it bourgeois, but it wasn't. It was what they were. It was craftsmanship on the one hand, this kind of self-independence and community. And the bourgeois was another word for provincialism. And this is where to be provincial was to be backward. And this infected generations of Europeans, of Americans, infected it to where they hated their roots and they wanted to get away, and they wanted to go to New York, and they wanted to go to San Francisco, because where they came from was so backward, and they had to get away. And this was conditioned into them. And then till later they realized, well, what am I doing? Why did I run? Why did I let them convince me that it was better in the city? And this was a giant movement, whether it was Berlin or Paris or London or New York or San Francisco. This was a common meme put into the societies, that we have the way, you are going to be crushed if you stay in your communities. And I think what they offered was an emptiness. And Lala, you brilliantly pointed out how existentialism morphed into this new Buddhism, and why they chose the new Buddhism as a way, as a vehicle to extend the control of existentialism is because Buddhism has no soul. It has no coherent self. It has no identity and no gods. And as you pointed out to me, it's a non-duality, meaning everything is equal. There is no good or evil. And you never judge, you observe. And when you have this emptiness, with this goal of emptying, which is the opposite of what we've tried to talk about in Crossing the Bridge, is that you cross the bridge complete, and yourself and your ego and your soul. This is an emptiness. And I believe that the predator, which is the machine in its aggressive state, the predator is designed to, it opens the door. This emptiness opens the door to allow the predator in, and this is where we get the emotional unraveling of people, because they have no defenses anymore. The system of philosophy, the system of religion as needing renovation as it did, was still a structure that kept people together within community, within a ladder to God. It was still a way to look up. And of course it needed alteration, of course. But what the existentialists did and what the new Buddhists are doing, they just destroyed it all, and they stopped people from looking up.
Well, people are encouraged to see reality itself as an empty space that holds whatever the mind can come up with. And in the existentialist writings of Sartre and de Beauvior, neither one of them could explain the spiritual urge in people or in human beings in their work. They didn't have the religious urge integrated into their system of thought, and never addressed that in any way.
And Lala, do you think that was done on purpose? Yes,
they couldn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Or they didn't want to. There was this. Yeah, and for me, again, I'm going to make the point for maybe our legacy of these radio programs is that they were allowed to spread, to become celebrities. That this atheism was purposely filtered throughout Western culture, and they became, again, sitting with Che Guevara and all, they became icons of the left, and yet pushing the woman into becoming an economic unit, so into a Marxist capitalist dynamic.
Yes, de Beauvoir veered straight into Marxism, and she saw work as the answer for women, that contributing to society through work made them authentic people, and then also she bought into the atheism that Sartre was a proponent of, and that turn of atheism, the turn that atheism takes for women is bad, because by focusing solely on the materialism, the social and economic rights of women, the spiritual and cosmic aspects and power of women is ignored, and women took a big hit that way.
Yes, it fractured them. It split them.
Mm-hmm.
It split their mind. In order to be a modern woman, they had to accept all of this. And no one wanted to be left behind. It was, no one wanted to stay home and, and do laundry, basically. This was just, they wanted, from 1907 on, if they had children, there was the National Organization of Women to have the babies having care, and they were just, the whole system was placed for them to become economic units. And they had their spirit. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and the whole idea of Planned Parenthood is, a lot of it is around family planning on the basis of how long the woman would want to stay in the workforce rather than, putting the family, having children and raising a family as primary.
Yes. And Lala, maybe we can, there's a point I would like to make on why they became atheists, because I think these people, they did everything with a purpose. I mean, they were change agents. They were social engineers. They didn't come by this idea just by accident and then fell into it. There was a plan, and the attack, and I'm a pagan for sure, so I'm in my defense of Christianity, I am trying to be open-minded, but they attacked Christianity with their atheism. And as you've pointed out when we've talked before, they attack Christianity not all to attack God, but not to attack the dogma or the theology, but that within the Western system of Christianity there was also the leap of faith, which is always criticized, but there was also a logic, a reason, a critical thinking that was taught, a system of learning that was
and
taught.
Morality.
That they wanted to
morality.
destroy. Yes, morality. Yes, day-to-day life, morality. The system of, love thy neighbor. And I think they wanted to attack this. And again, the Buddhism is the extension of the new Buddhism is the extension of the existentialist thought. And again, I feel it's like embedding a spy within your mind. It's a traitor to your internal government. It opens the door to the predator. It opens the door for your mind to be split and for your inner country to be taken over. And so you begin to, and I see it in women now. I see there is a movement to, we've been fooled. We have been fooled that where our family units are breaking down, what is they're getting from their careers is not a real worth. And I think that they have been fooled. And I think hopefully this is a progressive step, and that this kind of hypnosis, as you call it, this divine hypnosis, divine being inverted divine, this kind of mass hypnosis that is integral to keeping a system going, could be breaking down.
Right. Mass hypnosis is another attack on reason and on the critical faculties of the mind. Yes. And we know that it's an integral part of pop culture. And we also know from studying and reading the things that have been written about hypnosis that hypnotic programming is, there are triggers to fight against anything that comes close to
yes.
Like
what we're talking about tonight.
Yes, right.
Exactly.
Right. Anything that
yes.
will burst through the hypnotic trance is
yes.
going to elicit an irrational reaction in people.
Yes.
That's the way hypnosis
yes.
works.
Shoot the messenger, yes. And Lala, just to be clear for our listeners, when we talk about mass hypnosis isn't some, way out conspiracy theory idea. Mass hypnosis is a constant daily dosage of pop culture, of TV, of advertising, of movies, all designed to shorten your attention span, to make it less possible for you to sustain reason and critical thinking. And this is done with flash editing, which I saw from in sports and movies, that everything is cut quickly. Nothing lingers, nothing slowly evolves, and that's a real new trend. And this is puts people into a place where they cannot process fast enough and to critically think what they're seeing. And this is done from sports to politics to everywhere, that you see a million...
Movies are cut that way now.
Yes, and that's purposely done.
The frame rate is faster on movies, action movies and horror movies. A lot of times in horror movies, they'll just flicker past some really grotesque image, which you can't quite make out, but it's just enough to kind of open up a space in your mind for, something bad to be projected in there.
Yes, and you're left with nothing. You're left with any thoughtful response is negated in that kind of situation. And over time, in this mass hypnosis, this is what you expect. This is what you think is reality, because this is what you get from CNN, from your movies, and then this is you've been hypnotized. And again, when there are voices like what we're trying to do, to say, wait a minute, this isn't really human life, then shoot the messenger comes. I also think maybe, I know we're nearing the end of our half hour, that we'd also wanted to talk about sacred landscape a little bit, that when this movement that started with the existentialists, that the village, the community, the neighborhood was backward, your family was backward, these were all traps. Come to the city, come to New York, come to San Francisco, come to Berlin and London and Paris. And this opened us to be connected to nothing. That there is a connection, and we can talk about this in perhaps later episodes, that there is something in our landscape that we belong to, and that gives us a sustenance, and gives us an invisible good feeling that we need, that the landscape nurtures us, and that when we leave this and we go to these sterile places where, again, the cliche of, 8 million people in New York and nobody knows anyone, and it's complete isolation, this, again, weakens us and allows this splitting of our minds so that we just begin to accept what is popular. And I think we have to stop that. And I think that is... the existentialists became popular. They made them celebrities. They made them popular. So to go against that, or here in my town, to go against the new Buddhism, is you're really an outsider. Because this is hip. This is, this is the thin culture. This is, don't question. We go to war. We've done things reprehensible things we've done. And we're not supposed to remember that. We're not supposed to. It's okay. We will go to our yoga class. We will, and more our children are suffering because we're giving them that debt of we don't want to be adults and say, listen, we are split here. We are doing things out in the world with Monsanto, with the wars. We are doing things with the spying. We are doing things that is destroying the fabric of community. But yet we are just not judging, because we are very hip people now. We are very, we're not going to judge. And I think
working on your own inner peace is also...
Yes. And I think we're giving this insanity, and I will say it strongly, we are giving this insanity to our children. And that's why they're breaking down. And that's why they're burning out when they're young. And because we're giving them something that is not healthy. And I know with my daughter, when you give them truth and you give them health and love, they grow. There is an inner balance to them. And they use their critical thinking because they can do that. This is, my true feminism for my daughter.
If left to their own devices, people will use their own critical thinking.
Yes, no matter if they're 9 years old or, yes. Yeah.
And we're out of time. And do you have anything else to say? We have about a few seconds left.
Well, again, you brought up such great points, and I hope that people can be at least open-minded to see that these big movements are created on purpose. They're not created by accident. And we can talk more about that. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Good night. And these programs are available on YouTube at Sun Sojourn channel, YouTube. Thank you.